I'm Vince DeRay, and this is OK Computer 20 years later. Since the reissue OK Not OK came out earlier this June, I thought I'd take the time today to walk through the history, story, and influence Radiohead made with this album, and how they kinda sorta predicted the future. To begin, let's take a trip back to the 90s. Following the release of their 1995 sophomore record, The Bends, Radiohead went on an extended tour around the US for nearly 2 years to prove that they weren't just the creep guys. We're talking 200 shows promoting an album that didn't really do very well in the States. Once the tour was finally over, they were excited to begin working on their third album. The band sought to write something less personal and introspective like what was on The Bends, so Tom York, the primary lyricist and frontman, began writing down everything that he saw. But they were also exhausted from travel, so they wanted to keep the recording process local. They began rehearsing and recording in their Canned Applause studio, a converted shed near their hometown, but after recording only 3 songs, they hit a wall creatively and needed to switch locations. After taking a short break supporting Alanis Morissette in North America, they returned back home and recorded at St. Catherine's Court, a mansion owned by actress Jane Seymour. Oh my god, this is so 90s. Radiohead said this location switch was an important transition for them, as they were pushed out of their comfort zones and had to begin experimenting. Taking advantage of the rise in technology with music, Radiohead began experimenting with electronics, including drum loops, MIDI samples, electronic keyboards, a mellotron, and other various beeps and boops. On top of the electronics, they also began experimenting with live percussion instruments, such as the cabasa, the shaker, the claves, the glockenspiel, and other stringed instruments as well. Clearly, Radiohead had a mess of influences going into this album, including DJ Shadow, Miles Davis, Louis Armstrong, R.E.M., the Pixies, the Beatles, and even soundtrack composer Ennio Morricone. Clearly, this album didn't sound like a weird combination of sounds from all these musicians, but rather something completely new, something avant-garde, clean, metallic, and almost futuristic. While the band kept their eyes on the future musically, Tom was in a very strange point in his life. By analyzing the people that he saw during the rise in the internet and mass media, he began reading Noam Chomsky novels, Will Hutton's The State We're In, and Philip K. Dick's Valis, just to name a few. This led to some pretty honest and shocking lyrics, as Tom played with themes of transportation, technology, modern British life, capitalism, consumerism, and insanity, all fueling his dark writing and this album's overall message. Through these themes, the band depicts a world of paranoia. Let Down discusses the boring reality of the working world, where our days are highlighted by meaningless commuting. When asked about No Surprises, Tom explains the lyrics as our attempt to bury our emotions in debris of our lives, like plastic bottles. It doesn't rot, it just stays there. Electioneering is some grand declaration made by some political leader that was inspired by Noam Chomsky's Manufacturing Consent, where this political leader uses mass media and propaganda to credit himself. Pretty cool that the band can write something that sounds so futuristic while still writing lyrics that are weariness of what the future holds. Now, while most songs hint at issues with propaganda, politics, and technology, the band's anti-anthem, Fitter Happier, is as blatant and as upsetting as it gets. So much so that Tom himself describes it as the most upsetting thing he's ever written. This track is driven by a Macintosh synthesized computer voice named Fred. AI was so weird back then. Reading off of qualities that almost sound like a slogan.
More productive.
That's supposed to make up an alleged happy, healthy lifestyle, all while sounding neutral.
Regular exercise at the gym, 3 days a week.
Monotone.
Enjoy a drink now and then.
And lifeless.
No longer empty and frantic.
Throughout the entirety of it, while the band experiments in the background. Writer Sam Steele describes these lyrics as a stream of received imagery, scraps of media information interspersed with lifestyle ad slogans and private prayers for a healthier existence. It is the hum of a world buzzing with words, one of the messages seeming to be that we live in such a synthetic universe we have grown unable to detect reality from artifice. Sound dark? That's because we can relate. Besides killing the trend of Britpop, Radiohead basically carved a formula of what alternative rock was going to sound like in the 2000s, with countless bands taking influence such as Coldplay, Muse, The Killers, and The Strokes, just to name a few. But through their lyrics, they're creating a dystopian story that is more relevant today than ever. Now, don't get me wrong, some songs on this album are more personal, like when Tom writes about his nearly fatal car crash on the song Airbag. but a lot of it has to do with the world at large and where Radiohead thought the world was going. Author Alex Ross said that this album pictured the onslaught of the information age and a young person's panicky embrace of it. Today, 20 years after the album was released, we are more inundated and overwhelmed with information as technology continues to grow and evolve. Radiohead appeared to be ahead of the curve, forecasting the paranoia, media-driven insanity, and omnipresent sense of impending doom that subsequently comes to characterize everyday life in the 21st century. Rather than getting excited about the onslaught of information that we have, we become overwhelmed and anxious, trying to consume as much of it as we can, all while feeling disconnected to the world at large. Tom was weary of a world filled with technology, and not just in the lyrics. Even the album art and album title reflects this. Now, the title was taken from A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series, but Tom resonated with this, saying that it refers to embracing the future, of our future and of everyone else's. It's to do with standing in a room where all these appliances are going off and all these machines and computers and so on, and the sound that it makes. I mean, take the album art for example, it's just two stick figures shaking hands. Tom described the story behind the sketch as someone's being sold something they don't really want, and someone's being friendly because they're trying to sell something. That's what it means to me. This fascinated me because it seems like everywhere we go, especially on the internet, we can't really avoid getting sold to. We're now more inclined to observe than participate and chase short-term dopamine rushes rather than long-term success and happiness. I think you get my point. Radiohead inspired a generation of rockers to come, all while giving insight into what the 2000s and 2010s would look like with the digital landscape that we're currently living in. And while this future of technology dependency, social alienation, and political control looks bleak, like OK Computer, there's a hopeful ending. Never be complacent. Radiohead didn't want to be the same and ride the highs of Creep for the rest of their career, so they looked for influence in others, but inspiration within themselves, to create something great. So let's stop panicking about the future, trust ourselves, and slow down. Thanks for watching.
Slow down.